I've been able to develop very strong relationships with the docents. You know, one of the challenges that we have with those relationships is that as we all get a little bit older, people go on, they move on. And we have a celebration of life for Ken tonight as he has gone on and celebrating our comrade. And he has moved on. The one thing, remember, is we haven't lost him. He's gone on. We will see him again. And he has been freed of any challenges, physical challenges that he had, and he's smiling down on us now, going, you suckers are going to have to work through this until you see me again. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ken, in our world, living on, it has a sense of immortality. There are people that go through this life that toil and trouble and retire, and as I said, don't have the value of the relationships, they don't see the meaning in it. And in a way, they have no immortality. When they do pass on, they pass on. They have no comrades. Take joy in the fact that you have each other and that you are comrades. And you are comrades in a mission. One of the things for Ken that we wanted to do is we brought in his favorite fighters. We actually flew in the F6F from the Commemorative Air Force, the blue airplane there, the dark blue airplane, and then we brought in another one. And we have all the airplanes that he loved and that he wanted to be around, and I'm sure he's standing on the wing of that airplane going, how the hell do I start this thing and get it out of here, right? But Monty came to me and said, you know, I want to make sure that we have Ken immortalized, and one of the things we're going to do, you know, we've spent the last 2 days talking about the new hangar, which is going to go into the south of us, which is the Korea-Vietnam hangar, and there is a presidential area in the hangar with President 41 and 43, George Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, and George W. Bush, and both of them were pilots. And Ken will have a prominent display there with George Bush's jacket in memoriam that Monty has done in his memory, presenting that. And that is a piece of his immortality. Imagine, you think Ken would have, there'll be a big presidential seal on the floor and Ken's going to be right there and people are going to come in and see that. And that is so important. All of you remember that what this place does is it does give you a measure of immortality, whether you're working with children or you're dealing with artifacts or we're dealing with edifices or whatever we're dealing with here that commemorate the American spirit. All of that gives us a measure of immortality. And so tonight, at this celebration of life, if I can get you all to raise your glasses, I don't have one, but let's do a toast to our comrade. Here, here. Here. To Ken. Cheers. And don't forget that, you know, when that hangar goes up and we have that display in place, I want you to come back and you know, look at that monument and say, hey buddy, job well done. Job well done. And with that, and I only knew Ken as a colleague, as a docent. I didn't know him any other way than that. And now I'm going to yield the floor to Brandy, his daughter, to come up and talk about him as a father. And then we're going to open the mic and have some of you, if you have great stories or things like that, we'll open the mic and have you tell us about him, share a little bit about Ken. Brandy, why don't you come on up? Now here we will have applause. Here we go.
Thank you, Fred. So first I'm going to read something from my cousin, David Weber, who's an associate professor at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington. And he sent this to be read tonight, and then I will be making my own remarks. Ken Marts was always vibrating with ideas, some of them crazy, some of them brilliant, and always good cheer. He was my uncle, yes, and a mentor and guide as well. In my 30s, when I lived and worked in Asia, for several years, Ken and I communicated, taking my shoes off. Okay. Ken and I communicated only by letter. We signed our messages to one another, YLN, your loving nephew, and YLU, your loving uncle. In my youth, Ken lived in Northern California, and I lived in Los Angeles. Every time he visited Southern California with his wife and kids, my aunt and cousins, or on his own, was a big event for me. He always reserved at least an hour or so for us to do something together. I've seen very few people as artful as Ken in working a room, warmly and enthusiastically greeting people, introducing himself, or making small talk. In my 40s, I spent several years back in school earning an advanced degree. Ken came through Denver one time, and I introduced him to Frank, the professor I was closest to in my program. Ever after, Frank routinely asked about Ken and declared how nice a guy Ken was. The Ken Marts charm in action. World War II surely had an enduring impact on Ken, and his identity as a naval officer who had earned wings of gold shaped his sense of who he was. He told me very little about the dark side of his war experiences. More often, he would recall incidents that he found amusing, such as how whenever Japanese suicide planes approached his carrier, he would clamber into his Hellcat and fly straight at them. Doing so got him a reputation for having nerves of steel and more guts than smarts. Then in fact, Ken explained foxily he had worked it all out. The Japanese planes were focusing on the ship and ignoring other targets, so it was safer to be in the air than on the carrier. Here is my fondest memory of Ken. The first time I met him, I was only about 5 years old. My dad brought him into the living room where Ken was talking with my mother. Dad said, "David, this is your Uncle Kenny, the flyer." And ever thereafter, Ken, the pilot, the aviator, embodied for me the self-confidence and adventurous spirit we tend to associate with that occupation. And the very last letter he sent me, only a few months ago, was signed, YLU, Uncle Kenny, the flyer. So that's the easy one. So, I know it's important to start these things with a little bit of humor, and I remember at Carol's memorial, Kenny got up to the stage and he said, "You know, in the last 3 weeks, I haven't done one thing wrong." I don't have to tell you what a great friend Kenny was, because that's why you are here, because he was your friend. What I can tell you is what a great father he was. I won't idealize him. He wasn't Ward Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver, and he wasn't Robert Young, and Father knows best. But what Dad was, either of those perfect 50s fathers we knew and loved from television. When I look at pictures of him as a young father, he was 26 and had 2 little girls and a wife to take care of. It was pretty daunting, especially after having been a freewheeling Navy fighter pilot, single and carefree. What a life. We learn morals and characters from our parents. I can get a little bit of water here to go on with this. My dad taught me the art of getting the best seat in the house at the Hollywood Bowl for the cheapest ticket price. I remember the first time we went together. We made our picnic dinner, probably had some deviled eggs, brought wine, of course, and took the shuttle from the Federal Building in Westwood to the Hollywood Bowl. When we got there, Kenny bought the bleacher tickets seat for about $5, and I headed for the stairs and the escalators on my way to the nosebleed section. He took my arm and said, "Follow me." We went to the entrance for the boxes, and Kenny walks past the young boys checking tickets. One of them says, "Excuse me, sir, may I see your tickets?" And Kenny smiled and said, "Oh, we're with that couple up ahead, they've got our tickets." And just proceeded through, continued walking. What young kid is going to question a handsome, nicely dressed elderly gentleman? Off we went to the handicap section, where there was open seating and plenty of room to have our picnic dinner and an unobstructed view of the stage. I was hooked. I feel so fortunate that we spent lots of time together, considering I lived in San Francisco and he lived in Los Angeles for most of those years. We skied in Aspen many times and watched the fireworks on Aspen Mountain. We watched the Blue Angels together, and when I moved to LA, we played tennis every Monday night. He always made me look good when some guys were watching us on the court. He would hit the ball right to me and never hit as hard as he could to win the point. And then we would head off for pizza and beer. We spent quality time together, as he used to say. And the time he spent with Monty was really the happiest I've ever saw. He really loved her, her laugh, her smile, her enthusiasm, and her ability to remember in great detail what she had for dinner in a restaurant 20 years ago. For the first few months they were together, I really thought her name was Monty Bless Her Heart. Because that's what he always called her. It was Monty Bless Her Heart. I'm so grateful that I was around to enjoy even a small part of it. Treasured memories of Thanksgivings and Christmases together, road trips to wine country, and many great times in San Francisco. When I visited them here, he and I used to laugh on our late night walks with the pups, reveling in the beauty of Lake La Quinta, and I'd say, only you could get this lucky. Living in that beautiful home with a beautiful woman who adored him. He felt he didn't deserve his good fortune in meeting someone like Monty, but we forgive him his past peccadillos and say, yes, he did. That's exactly what he deserved. And they deserve each other, and everyone enjoyed being in their presence. I marveled at her unconditional love. She was so good to him, so nice to him, and never judgmental. A very patient woman. She is an inspiration to me. He did not go through life anything less than fully engaged. His insatiable and sometimes exhausting curiosity defined him. He could always be counted on to come up with a creative idea, a guy full of questions and suggestions. He was all in, always. So he saved the best for last. He really mellowed with age, and like a great wine or rare cheese, he was at his best these last few years. I'm so grateful to have known him, loved him, and to have been loved by him, and proud to call him my friend and my dad. Thank you.
Anyone want to come up and share a story or a memory? Dr. Dave, come on up.
Ken was a patient in my office for a number of years, and although I retired like 5 years ago, I still go into the office periodically. And the girls in the office say, oh, what a nice guy Ken Marts is. He's always appreciative of us, he's really nice to us, he brings us little gifts from time to time. So that reinforced my notions of Ken, having known him, just a wonderful guy, and tried to make everybody happy.
I'm Rich Ryder. Ken always called me Red. That's what I was called in the squadrons. When I last wore this cap, and this jacket, and these flight boots, about 10 years ago to an old pilot's APM, which is an all pilots meeting, Ken started that meeting with his corny jokes. And at every meeting thereafter for all these years, he always had a repertoire of corny jokes that we all loved and embellished. The camaraderie that he developed in the esprit de corps made Old Bull Pilots fun to go to when he was with us. And I'll always remember him and his corny jokes. And anytime there's a strong wind blowing, I'll wonder if that's Ken flying up the starboard side of the boat ready to break across the bow.
I made a New Year's resolution. My name is Don Aarons, and I'm a friend with Ken ever since we opened the museum. And I like to tell this story, and I have told it many times. I picked up Ken last fall, and he had just gotten out of the hospital. He'd been in there quite a while, and we're bringing him up for a meeting. And one of the few times I've ever seen him, and forgive me, I'll use a pilot's term, his daughter was down. And I said, how you doing? He said, you know, I laid in that hospital in a month and a half, and I was cut open, and they had trouble getting me closed up, and I had a lot of pain and everything, and it was so unusual for him to talk like this. And he says, I've done everything. You know, I did 167 traps. successful in real estate, flew for TWA around the world, married 2 absolutely beautiful women, had the world's greatest dog and daughters. He says, I've done everything. And so we drove on a little while along, and I said, wait a minute, Ken, you haven't done everything. And he gave me those sharp blue eyes and turned his head, you know, that good-looking head of hair, and he said, what haven't I done? And I said, Ken, you haven't done tomorrow. Because tomorrow you could love Bonnie some more, you could do all the volunteer work that you do around the valley, and you're going to be just a pleasant person wherever you are and a very special guy. So I've thought about that, and I use that frequently. I tell the story, and I say, you know, you haven't done tomorrow yet. And think about all the people that count on you and all the people that love you. And I sure love that guy. He was a special gentleman, a hell of a pilot, and just someone that we're not going to forget. I think the people around here have been here. So bless you, Bonnie, and the puppy, and the daughter, and everything. Thank you for sharing Ken with us in this night.
My name is Herb. I've known Ken for 25 years, long before he came to the desert. After Carolina passed away, we went to the spiritual center every Sunday. I sat with him on Sunday for about a year when he was grieving, and quite a guy. So I wrote just a couple of quick little words there. I jotted down, so I'm going to read these quickly. A life well lived, a testament to greatness. Ken Marts, a most remarkable man. Of Kenny, I am his biggest fan. Kenny knew the art of living. Kenny knew the art of giving. He gave to his family, to many a friend, organizations and charities. It did not end. Always ready with a word of cheer, to bring a smile, banish a tear. A man of purpose and of love. The word wonderful fit like a glove. On this day we must reflect. We gather to honor and respect a man both gentle and kind. A better person you will not find. Our words are real and very true. So dear friend, we celebrate you. And a better friend you will never find. Kenny, you will live on in our hearts and mind.
My name is Larry Spicer, and I'd like to speak to another side of Ken, his interest in community outside of flying. I knew him, of course, I'm a member of Old Pilots and have known him quite a while, but at the time he was living in Indian Wells, and I happened to be on the city council of Indian Wells at that time. So I got a call from Ken, and he said, I have an idea for you. I said, fine, what is it? He said, we need a community garden in Indian Wells. And he went on to describe it, and he described one he had seen in another city. And the result was we had some plans prepared. I was new on the council, and I proposed this, and they approved it anyway. And my only regret is we did not name it after Ken, but I made sure that he got the credit publicly for it. What it is that people that don't want to have a big garden at home, these are small plots, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet, and they're raised. And you can come in, you can grow your vegetables, you can grow flowers, whatever you want. And there's water there, and there's some other materials. And it's amazing, there's a waiting list even today for people that want to get a plot in a community garden that was the original idea of Ken Marts.
My name is Gary Luters, and I have known Ken for over 15 years, Old Pilots, and it's because of him and because of Blaine that I'm now a volunteer here at the museum. Blaine, thank you very much. I visited him in the hospital, and then I had an accident about a year and a half ago, so I'm going to share with you a message that he left on my phone here that I will cherish and save forever. Get this thing going, hold on.
Gary, Ken Marts, this is Saturday afternoon. I just looked at my email and realized that you have had a problem. My gosh, my friends, just because I spend time in the hospital doesn't make it sound like it's fun. I hope all's well, my God. Maybe next week, if it's okay, if you're up to it, I'd love to come by and see you and cheer you up and tell you this is how it takes, what it takes to get back together. I'm at area code 760-702-6111. 702-6111. Take care. And I know Shirley's taking good care of you. Wonderful caregiver. Bye-bye.
Good evening. My name is Blaine Mack, and I first met Kim here at this Air Museum the day it opened. And in that time, we managed to get what we might call an incendiary relationship, because we were the very closest of friends, but didn't want anybody else to know it. It was a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing, and it worked for us, because at the very same time we were putting together the Old Bull pilots, and he and I worked together, and we always made sure that nobody knew that we were getting along well. One of our trademarks used to be, in the early days and for several years here at the Air Museum, to give talks, some of them at the classes for the new volunteers, and some of them out in the community. And we almost had a routine that we never rehearsed, that just developed. And that's that I would always start, and somewhere along the line, I would make sure that I dropped several really good barbs about the Naval Air Force, which would set him into motion. And so he got to play the good guy then, but I always got even with him. But I thought one of the really earmarks of Ken was when we went down way south of here to a school to put on a program. And when we got through, he said, "I'll treat you all to lunch." So, of course he did. Where did he go? To a place that didn't cost him anything. Because he was serving all of his time for this community. And bless his soul, you know, I guess that's why it was so much fun to jab him, because he knew you didn't mean it, but he didn't want anybody else to know it. And Ken, I know you're up there listening, and you're giggling. Thank you.
My name is Bob Andrade, and Ken and I were some of the first people that got involved in the museum when we were up on the boulevard. That was 2 years before he opened. And when I told him that I was a plane captain on F6F, we became very close friends, because he said he loved his plane captain. But I want you, before you leave, I want you to, you'll see over there on the board over there, you'll see Ken's picture aboard the aircraft carrier with some of his men. It's on the top left-hand side of the first frame over there. So be sure to look at it before you leave. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Wangshu, and I've been a docent here for a few years, and how many doesn't really matter. But it's just been one of those interesting things that I've had to do with Kim. And some of you may remember in America Reader's Digest that there's a section, one of the most forgettable people that I've ever met. Do you remember that? You don't have to raise your hand. Oh, okay. But anyway, Kim would be, in my opinion, one of those unforgettable people that we've ever met. I met Kim on the golf course at the Indian Wells Golf Resort some years ago. And I always felt that when you meet somebody on the golf course and you play with them, you can pretty well determine what's in their minds, how they think, and how they behave, and what their basic principles are as a human being. And Ken had all those attributes. I really believe that. And we used to talk about, even until recent months, about just going out and playing 1 or 2 holes. But he was an incredible man, Monty, and you know that. And I'd like to say to you and the children and the family of Ken Mars, God bless to you. And I think you also have a wonderful, wonderful memory here at the Air Museum. If you look behind me of the painting of Stan Stokes, that's a Corsair that's landing on an aircraft carrier. I'm not sure exactly, but I believe it's to be the Enterprise. And so when you come to this museum and you look at this beautiful painting that Stan Stokes did, that's Kenny Marks landing that Corsair on that aircraft carrier. That is an incredible memory, and it's something that will always be here, and he will be remembered by. Again, Monty, to you and your family, God bless. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Sweeney. I'm involved in training here. Kenny was a good friend. I knew him from the golf course. I knew him from Old Bold. We had meals on a regular basis, and we were pretty good buddies. And Ken was a great gentleman. Betty was in the hospital off and on. Kenny never fails to visit. But in the museum, we have a training program, and Kenny always gave one of the lectures. And he was one of the most popular. He'd get guys on the end of their chairs. He flew off a little Jeep carrier off Okinawa, had quite a military record, but his humor was great. He talked about one time they're trying to land, and he's trying to peek over the side of the airplane to get a better view of the LSO, and he had taken off his chin strap, which is no-no, and off blew the helmet, and bye-bye into space. So he lands, and over the loudspeaker very sharply he hears, "Mr. Marts, report to the captain's office." And he had a whole series of those, which I won't bother, but he had a great sense of humor. And I miss him very much, and I'll miss him in my classes. So thank you.
Well, you know, again, I think the measure of the man is look at how many people came out to offer tribute to him and the family, and the great stories, and to even hear the level of compassion for someone who's not doing well in his own words, which is, you know, amazing in our society anymore. We live on in this technology. You know, we can hear our voices and so on and so forth. But as I said, I think the thing, as I conclude this for the family, is to remember that he has gone on. He will live on. He will live on in the museum. He will live on in our aircraft. He will live on in our hearts. And he will live on with the family in the loving relationship that you had. So God bless again. God bless. Let's toast. God bless Ken. God bless him. God bless you all for coming. Thank you very much. On behalf of the family, express thanks. Monty, do you wish to offer anything? Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening with food and drink. And again, thank you for being with us.